Today we're plunging into the fascinating and pretty turbulent world of cars, especially electric vehicles. Our mission is to cut through the noise, really unpack the forces shaping how you buy cars, how they're made, and the fierce global competition behind it all. We want you to be genuinely informed.
It really is a pivotal moment, isn't it? You see these rapid policy shifts, changing consumer habits, and these intense international pressures. It's creating a landscape that's, well, incredibly dynamic, but also for a lot of people, full of uncertainty. It really affects anyone interested in cars, tech, or even just the wider global economy.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with hurdle number one. This surprise news that America's big EV tax credit, it's on the chopping block, might disappear much sooner than we thought.
Exactly. And this isn't just, balancing the budget. It signals something bigger about how the US sees its role in boosting EV adoption. There's this huge new bill in the Senate, 549 pages long, and buried deep inside is what some are calling a death sentence for the tax credit. It proposes ending both the $7,500 credit for new electric cars and the $4,000 for used ones for eligible folks, obviously just 180 days after the bill becomes law. And get this, the EV leasing loophole, the one letting car makers apply the credit to leases on cars that wouldn't normally qualify. That would end instantly. Poof.
Right. Wow. 180 days is fast. Now, the Senate bill sounds pretty drastic, but I heard the House has a slightly different take, maybe more gradual.
Yeah, that's right. The House of Representatives has its own bill. Their plan aims to kill the EV tax credit by the end of 2025. Although, interestingly, they do have this extension through 2026, but only if a car maker hasn't sold 200,000 EVs yet. Another key difference.
Yeah.
The House bill throws in a $250 annual fee on EVs. The Senate version doesn't have that.
Okay, so with these changes possibly coming, what's the immediate impact for, the average person looking to buy beyond just the sticker price? Because, well, EVs aren't really at price parity yet, are they?
No, you're right, they're not. The average EV is still selling for over $55,000. That's almost 12% higher than your average gas car. So the question for you, the buyer, is pretty stark. If that car costs 5 grand more, maybe even more, are you still picking the EV without that credit? Now, the Senate bill does offer an alternative. Sort of. It suggests letting people deduct the interest paid on their car loan. On paper, yeah, for maybe a $57,000 loan at 5% over 5 years, you could deduct more than the current $7,500 credit.
Okay, sounds potentially good, but isn't a direct credit, like right off the top, psychologically way more appealing? And just easier to figure out than some complex tax deduction later? Does this really feel like an equivalent for most people?
That's precisely the issue. For most consumers, the key driver for adoption is that lower upfront cost, that smaller monthly payment. And that's exactly what the current tax credit delivers. Remember the original idea? It was simple: promote electric cars, build trust in the tech. Let the charging infrastructure and the manufacturing catch up and, push automakers to stay relevant globally. This shift kind of moves away from that immediate boost.
Right. But it's not just the tax credit causing ripples, is it? We're also seeing huge shifts because of global trade stuff, especially tariffs and this real fear of missing out on current prices.
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating dynamic. There's a new cars.com survey. Automotive News reported on it, finding that a whopping 52% of people actively shopping for a car are looking to buy sooner than they planned, specifically because they expect prices to jump due to tariffs. And another 7% are thinking about moving faster. Only about 22% say tariffs aren't affecting their timing at all.
Yeah,
That's a small minority.
52%. That's huge. That's got to be sending massive waves through the market. We heard manufacturers were kind of eating those tariff costs for a while, but now they're getting ready to hike prices. How does that create this domino effect people are talking about? Higher costs for new and used cars, except Teslas, apparently.
Exactly right. When imports from overseas slow down, maybe because of tariffs or the threat of them, the supply of new cars gets tighter. Simple economics. Prices go up. And then naturally that pushes up demand and prices in the used car market too. It leads to this ironic paradox for American buyers. Studies show that cars assembled right here in the US are actually notoriously more expensive. The average is $53,290. Compare that to China, around $50,600, Canada at $46,400, Mexico just under $42,000. Other global markets average around $49,500.
Okay, that price gap is stark. But is it just about production costs, or are there other things like maybe higher labor standards here, tougher safety rules, maybe even just higher quality expectations for US built cars that add to that cost?
Those are definitely factors. Yeah, they all play a part in the final sticker price, no doubt about it. But, whatever the reasons are, the bottom line is these tariffs are making that idea of a reasonably priced car harder and harder to find for Americans. It forces you to ask, okay, do I want American made or do I want reasonably priced? Because the tariffs are making it tough to have both.
Right. Okay, let's pivot a bit. Moving beyond tariffs, let's look at China. Their own domestic EV industry is facing some serious pressure. I've seen terms like Hunger Games era and an industry wide elimination phase being thrown around.
Yeah, those are strong terms, but they reflect what analysts are predicting. Basically, a brutal shakeout, a trimming of automakers and suppliers who are short on cash. I mean, think about it. Over 100 automakers in China. A brand crisis, as they call it, was almost inevitable, really. You have the big players, BYD, Geely, Neo Xpengs. They've got market share, they've built out charging networks. But many smaller brands and even some major suppliers, they're really hurting for money right now. And this elimination phase isn't just about the weak fading away. It feels more like a rapid, maybe even forced market correction. The goal seems to be forging a leaner, tougher Chinese EV industry that's ready for a major export push.
And digging into those reports from China, one thing that jumped out was this widespread problem of automakers just not paying their suppliers on time. What's going on there? Is it just that they're broke, or is it more like, I don't know, standard practice?
Well, that's what's so interesting. Bloomberg reported that Chinese car makers met with regulators and actually pledged to pay suppliers within 60 days, moving towards global norms. But apparently, there's a lot of skepticism from the suppliers themselves. Because for some car makers, even giants like BYD, payment cycles can stretch to hundreds of days, hundreds. And the workaround, get this, they issue promissory notes, basically IOUs, promises to pay later, sometimes much, much later. Can you imagine running a supply business like that? Your payments just stuck in limbo. It's causing the supplier industry there to, as one source put it, basically implode.
Wow, hundreds of days.
Yeah.
Okay, and that leads to another huge issue in China, right? This overcapacity problem. We're hearing about automakers just dumping new cars onto dealers who are begging them to stop and flooding the used market with these so-called zero-mile cars, brand new cars sold cheap as used. What are the consequences of that?
Well, if you connect the dots. The Financial Times quoted an analyst predicting China's auto industry enters this industry wide elimination phase in 2026 at the latest. The prediction includes some companies will die of liquidity crises. Even government officials are apparently issuing verbal warnings about crazy discounting and those overdue payments we talked about. It's just a stark reminder that even in a market that looks like it's booming, fierce competition creates casualties. We could see brands merge, consolidate, or just, well, drop off the face of the earth, which leads to this idea of zombie cars, cars without a company backing them anymore.
Zombie cars. That's
Yeah.
unsettling.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for someone who, say, bought one of those cars last year?
Yeah.
Are they just stuck with an orphan vehicle?
Potentially, yeah. It could mean real headaches down the line, trouble getting parts, finding service, maybe even warranty claims becoming worthless. It definitely adds a whole new layer of risk for buyers in that market.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've got tax credits potentially vanishing in the US, tariff fears driving buying habits, and this intense shakeout happening in China. Let's bring it back home. How do these huge interconnected global shifts from Washington policy to Beijing market chaos, how do they actually affect your car buying decision right now?
Well, take the tax credit again. Losing that $7,500, like we said, it translates to over $140 a month on a typical 5-year loan. That's real money. So you have to ask yourself, does losing that make certain EVs suddenly unobtainium for you? Is taking it away a smart budget move by the government? Or is it maybe a tech stopping roadblock just when the US arguably needs to be competing hard against China on EVs?
Sure.
It really throws those core tensions into sharp relief, doesn't it? That delicate balance between government nudges, the global push and pull of trade rules, and just raw, fierce competition driving change in huge markets like China.
Indeed. We've certainly covered a lot of ground today, and it's clear the whole auto world is shifting fast and everything seems connected.
Absolutely. So, maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Considering all these intertwined forces, the policy changes, the consumer pressures, the intense global competition, what does the car landscape maybe 5, 10 years down the road really look like? Not just for the big companies, but for your driveway, something to definitely mull over.